me at the Musial with Alan and Daniel. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good morning. Welcome into another edition of Meet Me at Musial. I'm your host, Daniel Shoptaw at C70. With me, as almost always, Alan Medlock, a Medlock one, coming back from the Hawaiian vacation. And here we are, 4th of July holiday. It's just been a good week for you, hasn't it, Alan?
Yeah, you know it has been. I mean, it's yeah. I think it was. I think it was deserved. I don't know if deserved is as. I think needed.
Needed
is
might
probably
be the word.
the right way to say this, but yeah, it was awesome. You know, you guys have heard the stories on here before. I would assume my wife is a graduate from Hawaii. She was a military kid, and that's where she grew up. So we go out there and have a tour guide, and this is our third time out, and each time I go out, it makes it that much more difficult to come back. So no, it was great. I am actually glad to be back though, and back on the show and all that. So you do get to watch the Cardinals in the middle of the day out there. I will say that's it's kind of cool.
Yeah, especially those morning or the afternoon games here.
Well, I'll tell you, I sent you the picture, but it was amazing to be able to listen to the game on Sunday before anybody else was awake on the beach there in Waikiki, and those are memories that are pretty darn nice, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's good.
Amazing.
Somebody should have good memories of this week because the Cardinals sure don't.
Yeah.
I guess that's probably overstating it because since the last time we recorded, the Cardinals swept the Guardians and then took a holiday from scoring in Pittsburgh. And so when you look at, I mean, it feels like to me, and I kind of wrote a little bit about it at the Substack, that is almost the dichotomy of this season.
Yes. Go ahead.
I mean, just the fact that they can be really, really good, they can be really, really bad, and I don't want to say there's no consistency because they've obviously been better more often than they've been bad, but it's still not a we can rely on this kind of team thing.
Yes. No, I agree with that, and I think that a lot of those situations does come from the youth aspect of it. I think that there's still a learning going on. I want to give you a lot of credit because I felt like your good, the bad, and the ugly, or you take the good and the bad, was a great piece. Because honestly, throughout the whole Pittsburgh series, there was two things I felt like they were overlooking. I felt like there was two reasons they were overlooking the Pittsburgh series. One, the holiday series with the Cubs starting today. I felt like that was a big one. I felt like there was some juice breaking off 2-2 where you felt like you could have won the series. I felt like you saw that in the end of the series with the Contreras Heat, and it's things that I like to see. That shows that there's a little bit of skin in the game. I felt like you did you made another great point. I think that they were overlooking that series because of the day off. I think that it was just a rush to the bottom. And, in baseball, especially when you face the pitching staff that you had to in Pittsburgh, sometimes those things can snowball on you. And I felt like your piece did a really good job of wrapping that up. And honestly, you're right. I mean, it's going to be a roller coaster per se. I think a lot of that comes from youth, but it hasn't really dimmed my opinion at all of the ball club. I still like where they are. I don't think that any of us expected this to be the situation, other than hope that some of the guys would start to mature and grow a little bit, and that's kind of where I think they are. Disappointed for the past week, yes, but keep in mind that the Pirates were 7-0 on that homestand. So they're playing pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously, and I talked about it and I've seen it a little bit. They're one game over 500 since they switched their manager, and it's hard not to. I mean, especially with a team like that. I mean, and it's what almost 50 games, so it's not like the smallest of samples. It's not like they're 3-2 or anything like that. They have played better since this change, and like you said, they just swept the Mets before they took the Cardinals on, and obviously the Mets have had their struggles as of late, but they're still a very good team. So, it's not like, I mean, it would be worse if you gone into Colorado and not scored for 3 games or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But you still, anytime you go to anybody and get shut out 3 times in a row,
Sure.
that's tough.
Well, and it's on Wednesday, it was the frustrating part of, I think they left 9 guys in scoring position. One of those to where, a hit or 2 in there wins the game, keeps from the sweep. So yeah, you're right. I mean, that's where the frustration comes from.
Yeah, and that goes a little bit to what you were saying on the youth of the team, because they are still trying to figure out, how to be that kind of consistency. But I think, it also goes to, the injuries that we saw. Herrera being gone has been a big deal, I think, overall. You get to the end of that Pittsburgh series, that last game, and you don't have Arenado and you don't have Contreras, and then you don't have, Jordan Walker, you don't have Herrera. This is a lineup that still has a lot of pieces to it, and it's a lot of good pieces, but it's also, not what not your frontline lineup. And so, I mean, that's not all of it. I mean, there were so many things that go into that, with the the wearing down of the team, getting to the end of this, month of 30 something games and just having 2 days off, um, the injuries, and then just, just not coming through. Like you said, they had opportunities, they weren't able to do it. And except for the first game, and they should have done more against Andrew Heaney. I mean, I think that's just, even with all those excuses, they still should have probably done more against him.
Well, he's from Oklahoma. He's going to come.
Another reason they should have done more about it. Is that what you're trying to say?
Hey.
Anyway, but yeah, I mean, they were in games, and you face Paul Skeens, that's going to be tough. And even though the Cardinals have never lost to Paul Skeens and still haven't, it's not like they beat him up. They basically hang on until he gets out of the game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I get it, but yeah, it's so frustrating. And again, you come off of a series against Cleveland, a team that's pretty good. I mean, not great. I mean, it's right around that 500 mark. They're in the NL Central race AL Central race, but some degree, because the AL Central's kind of as weak as the NL Central, that kind of thing. But you go in there, and except for one inning that Miles Michael has struggled in, you go in and basically shut them down, right? And you go in and really feel good about what that team looks like. So, if you're going to get shut out by a divisional rival over 3 games, I would rather it be Pittsburgh than going into Wrigley.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point, because you would, now that they may go in and lose the series on weird stuff that always happens here in Wrigley, especially the 2-day games. Essentially, the things happen and that crowd gets on top of you. But you would expect them to at least walk away with a win there. So you're hoping that the sweep was well timed, so to speak, without losing much more ground before the break and kind of figuring out who you are. The one thing that has, I know it's kind of segueing again, we've said this the last 2 or 3 weeks that we've been on, though. They're making it interesting. And that's the thing, and they're fun to watch. And it's back to the nightly watch, the nightly follow, and the things that, I'm a hardcore fan. We all are. Everybody that's listening to the show, you and I, we can exchange stories, but this has been a fun summer to watch them, and to see the developments, and to the idea that there's going to be some decisions to make here, and in a few weeks, of who's coming and going, and both of which are going to be interesting. And that's not necessarily something we had counted on.
Yeah, I will say, more so than earlier in the year. Like when they get down, I'm not saying when they get down like 1-0, 2-0 or whatever, but if they're down 5 or 6-0, like in this stretch, like with that first game against, you didn't necessarily expect a whole lot of. I didn't expect a whole lot of rally to them. I guess maybe because they are tired and stuff like that. The
Yeah.
good thing is, yeah, they've kept a lot of those games. Like even if you go back to the end of that Cubs series, they got blown out of the one game, but that last game, they had the tying run at the plate in the ninth inning.
Yeah.
And then lost. They had chances in Pittsburgh in those last couple of games late. So yeah, they've kept games close enough that you kind of expect that maybe they could put something together. Now, again, they have it, and as Derek Gould points out, that's been 47, 48 innings since they've scored a run against a National League team. Hopefully that changes in like the first inning this afternoon. But yeah, they have been. You're right. They have been competitive, and I really look forward to seeing how they look after. Well, not today because it's on Apple TV, but how they look after a day off, and then can they get by the next what week and a half till the All-Star break. I think that's going to be. I'm sure everybody. I'm sure everybody in baseball is looking forward to that just because to get that break. But the Cardinals, I think they have a couple of days off in there too, so they may get revitalized to some degree if fatigue has been an issue.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I would think I would think that it is a big issue at this point, especially considering that you're doubling up a lot.
Yeah,
Haven't they played 6 double headers at this point?
yeah, yeah.
Which is that's tough. Um, so yeah, I would say that. Like I said, eternal optimist here. The I would think that that's probably playing a big part. Yeah, I mean, you off today, off Monday, and then then you push with 6 for the break. And I still think they were kind of hosed on some of the All Stars, but that's one of those things. I don't know. We talked about that a little bit last week, but I mean, you're in striking distance, and I think that's all we asked for.
Yeah, I think that's what you're right. I mean, like Mo has said in a number of places, but definitely said at Blogger Day, he was hoping for an interesting,
Yeah,
complicated trade deadline, and that's what we're getting to. Unless they do a complete tailspin over the next 3 weeks, and again, All-Star breaks in there, so there's a few days, there's a number of days off in that. Unless they just completely melt down, Mo's going to have some decisions to make, and I think that there's arguments to be made a lot of different ways on what you do for this team. But it's definitely not the slam dunk. Okay, what we thought at beginning of it in March, we thought, okay, they're going to get to this point, and then we're going to talk about, where's Ryan Helsley going, and will anybody want Steven Matz, and can we trade off Eric? Where are these
yeah,
pieces going so that we can revitalize and stock for the future? And you could still have those conversations.
yeah.
I think there's a logical reason to have those conversations, but you're not having them for the same reason that you would have had them. What we thought we were going to be having.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's one of those. Now you can also flip side this by saying, well, their value's clearly down, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if any of the names that you brought up, maybe Matt's a little bit, or I don't know if any of those moves necessarily hurt them right now. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
And it's one of
yeah.
those to where now that also could be a situation where, well, no, I want some now. That's going to be that argument, but now I think the foundation is there to see that hey, they're going to be pretty good regardless of whether those guys move out or not.
Yeah, I think that especially the starting pitchers, or well, if you conclude Matt's that, I guess he's a starter slash reliever, but those guys. Again, whether you can find value for getting them back is a different story, and I don't know. I mean, you could have on Steven Matz before June, and June was terrible for him. I did some of those numbers there, but pretty much everything, every time he came in, except for the last time in June, he gave up a run.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't look good, and he's kind of hitting. I mean, there's going to be concern in other front offices on whether
Yeah,
he's hitting a fatigue level because he's He's already pitched more than he did last year,
Yeah,
and almost as much as he has in every year, but 2023 when he actually did start a little bit. He had 100 and
yeah,
some innings. So I don't know if there's a concern about that or not, but Matz has been very effective against lefties. I could see somebody giving a double-A prospect or something of that nature for Steven
yeah,
Matz. And I don't know. I mean, if you're not going to get a huge return, if you're getting a lottery ticket back on a guy like Matz in this situation where the Cardinals are competitive, but not necessarily, running away with anything, do you go ahead and make that move?
yeah. I mean, I think so. I think that they're at that point now to where it's um yeah. I mean, I do because, but I go back and forth on these things to where it's a situation to where are they still stockpiling picks and stockpiling prospects to see what they can get out of it, or are they at the point now to where the culture and the foundation, the expectation is where it is, and you need a piece back that you can count on. I'm not really sure. I why I say the Matt deal is the same at the value proposition that you brought up is that as a he's shown that he could extend innings and is good against lefties, and that's going to be valuable to other other teams. But I also think it's going to be valuable in the long term to the Cardinals too. So to answer your question and to kind of keep it in the gray area, I'm not really sure. I think at this point they're probably past just the dump prospect of it,
Mm.
and where we kind of thought they were a couple years ago, just to get back what you get back. I think there is going to have to be a value play on that, and Matz is the one that's kind of in the middle of, is he more valuable to you here than whatever prospects you get back?
Yeah. I think it also depends on who's evaluating the prospects, right? I mean, if
That's
that's
true. That is very
Time
true.
Bloom and his crew and the development process that they are implementing and plan to continue to implement. I just think back to um the Paul DeYoung trade, right? They got Matt Swanson, who I think at the time we just kind of thought, okay, it's a guy, right? And now Swanson is I think being underused at the major league
Yeah,
level. I feel like he only gets the garbage time, which I mean, I'm not saying you put him in the ninth inning or anything, but he's been pretty effective and a lot more effective than a throw in on a Paul DeYoung trade when you know, the Blue Jays just kind of, took a gamble on him. They weren't going to give up much. They just kind of needed some insurance.
yeah,
And he was a double A arm and it worked out. So if you could get something like that, something that you feel fairly confident will make a major league debut, um, I think it's probably worth it because I don't know. I know that Matt, you're right that Matt still has value to this club, but I don't know that it's irreplaceable value. I mean, I
agree.
think that,
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
you could
Yeah,
move somebody into that spot.
yeah, I mean, outside of the rotation, it's one of those to where, well, I don't want to say outside of it because is yeah, that would be the easiest one to fix. I would assume that they would have somebody to backlog there at that one point, and I
Mhm.
just kind of you wonder that as a contender, a Matz is huge. When he's good Matz,
Right.
but when the rotation is right now, I mean, iffy at best. You're thinking, well, can you get any takers for those guys, and
Mhm.
maybe improve yourself by starting the young guys. I'm not completely sure, and I kind of feel that way with Helsley too. I just the doubling down on Helsley this year because they felt like they were going to be better than they were, which I like that a lot. Is that they had the belief that hey, we're going to keep him because that we think that we're going to be a lot better. Tells me that he may not be on the market at all, and there may be a potential of him coming back. But that's still one of those that it in a situation like this, I think that I probably move those guys. And
Mhm.
I'm not. I think you're beyond middling, and I know that sounds crazy because you're essentially in the same spot you have been the past couple of years. But I don't think you crater like you have in the past couple of years. And I just feel like the new era has begun,
Mhm.
and some of these and I don't think you can necessarily be married to some of the names.
No, I think that I talked about this. I don't remember where, but we've talked about it before. Um, I feel like this team has done, in Mo's eyes and in the front office's eyes, enough to be rewarded. And
Good point.
whether
Yeah.
that means adding an arm or a piece, or at the minimum not trading off what would seem to be a key piece in Ryan Helsley. Um, I'm not saying that you can't replace Helsley. I'm not saying that it's not a smart move to move Helsley. I
Yeah.
mean, I talked about trading Ryan Helsley at the last trade deadline.
Yeah.
Um, but I also think it sends a message to the clubhouse that they don't want to send.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
feel like, and I think there's a decent chance they offer him a qualifying offer at the end of the year just to see what
Agree.
happens.
Agree. I think that they masked that, and that's or have kind of sent that message out that I think that he may be here multiple years. That's and I honestly I'm not arguing that as much.
Mhm.
It's I don't know. It's more of the mystery what actually happens at the deadline than anything. But yeah, you're right. I mean, and we always go back to the hater move of hey,
Mhm.
don't blow up the clubhouse, especially on a team that's built on this chemistry. So yeah, that's the one that I see that doesn't happen the most, and wouldn't surprise me if he's here longer than that.
I think it would surprise me if he was here more than next year. I expect a qualifying offer. It's possible that he can't find a deal somewhere that pays him, over 3 years, and he has to accept the qualifying offer. But I don't think the Cardinals go any deeper than that. And then they can't, after he's received the qualifying offer once, he can't receive it again. Now, granted, at the end of next year, it may not matter because of the lockout and all that kind of fun stuff. But
Uh,
I think that at most he would be here next year. But I think the Cardinals, you know, and they might, even if they got, even if he agreed to the qualifying offer, they might turn around and trade him. But that would, I mean, Hein Bloom, and like you said, a new people coming in, they're not going to be as married to these names as some of these folks, just because they aren't the ones that drafted them, they aren't the ones that developed them.
yeah,
So who knows how that reaches out. But as for Matz, yeah, I can see Matz getting traded. Honestly, I think if Eric Fetty isn't traded, I think there comes a point this between now and the end of the season where he's released. Um,
man,
I think that's a possibility because one, he is, at 7.5 million on the year, so he's earned right now. If you cut him right now, you're only paying him like $4 million to go sit at home, and that's not unheard of for the Cardinals. And the farther they get, I mean, you're going to get past the trading deadline, so you're going to be closer to that 3 million, 2.5 million if you try to do that.
yeah,
I think, if they are, I think it's probably more if they start to slide out of things. But if they start looking at like, okay, we need to get McGreevy up here. Quinn Matthews is pitching at Memphis, so if he give him another month, and maybe he looks like he's ready to come up, and they've got to find some room. I think that unless Fetty changes significantly, that's the easiest one. And maybe he signs to somebody else for in August or something of that nature. But I mean, you look at the baseball savant page and how blue it is and how he's not striking anybody out. And it doesn't feel like he's fooling anybody. Definitely not the last couple of games hadn't been fooling anybody. And you wonder how long the Cardinals ride with that. Now, their depth is not huge, so right now they'll probably keep him for a bit. But I think there comes a point where they're not as concerned about filling innings, and that at least becomes on the table.
yeah. That is a something I hadn't really thought about. Yeah, it's pretty crazy considering where come over in a deal that was huge in a
Yeah.
kind of in the similar situation last year when your prospects were much higher, and he thought that hey, this is the starter they need to a potential DFA is pretty nuts, and it makes a lot of sense because even if you move past the deadline, that would be a guy that would hit that second waiver deadline and
Mm-hmm.
and be out. You know what I mean? It's that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. Unfortunately, and you're right. I mean, I feel like you brought up depth, and I think that's the only reason some of them are staying in the rotation right now. Potentially Fetty. I think that they're
Mhm.
locked into Michaelis for now. But you're right. I mean, the ups and downs of Palante and it's just it's becoming a kind of a difficult situation. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, Michaelis has roots in the Cardinals. I mean, he's been there since what, 2018? One of the
Yeah.
longest serving Cardinals on the major league roster. I think they ride it out till the end. I don't see that there's a way that they release him. And he's not been
No,
I mean, he's
agreed.
been
Agreed.
Miles Michaelis, right? I mean, he's not been super, but he's had moments. I mean, he's overpitched some of the metrics at times this year. So I just think, I think that's a ride. They'll ride that out. At worst, they would, if they traded Steven Matz, they'd shift him to the bullpen if they wanted to. But I don't even see that really.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
I can
agreed.
see, yeah, but
No, I completely agree with that one. That's how I feel, and I feel like Michael still throws up enough quality starts, so to speak, that keeps him in ball games
right,
that he'll be valuable. And you weigh those other things that you just mentioned, and I think that you're probably spot on.
yeah. So I think. Again, even though we're talking about a complicated or um, some sort of deadline, I guess complicated is probably the best way to put it. I don't know that it really changes much. Can the Cardinals go out and bring
Yeah,
somebody in? Now that's, I guess, but I don't know. I still haven't figured out exactly how that works.
agreed. I mean, and if this wasn't a year that that was it wasn't the what I'm so glad we've kind of moved past the reset rebuild chat, so to speak. I
Mhm.
mean here
Yeah,
we are bringing it back up, but that was so annoying in the off season just because there was no movement. But this is one also a year if we didn't know that and hadn't heard that in the offseason, we're thinking, hey, what starters available that they can go get? You know what I mean? But now,
right, right.
where they've played themselves into that, I'm just skeptical. Like if you told me that they did absolutely nothing at the deadline, this is the one year where I would think, okay, I can live with that. Where in this same
Mhm.
situation, even last year, I would have been like, are you kidding me? You're right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I could see it being, well, the word complicated, and you're spot on that one. That is that there may not be any movement, and they may not be in it. But I would love for the fact that they were able to go get a starter and kind of galvanize this last run of Mo, and it would be awesome. I just don't anticipate it.
Yeah, I mean, if they could find, and I think what ideally they would love to find, right, is a starter that had another year of control, right?
Sure.
At least one more year to kind of, because Matz won't be here next year, Michaelis won't be here next year, Fetty won't be here next year. You've got Sonny Gray, assuming he doesn't change his mind and want to be traded. Um, Gray, Libertor, who knows, maybe Matthews, maybe McGreevy. It's a very young rotation. So if they could get some sort of veteran starter or a young veteran starter, somebody that's got 3 or 4 years of experience but still has a couple years of control, I mean, I think they would do that. The problem with that is, though, it would cost one of those hitters that has a similar amount of control. And again, those are pieces that the Cardinals have been very hesitant to give up, and it feels very unlikely they would give them up at a trade deadline versus like in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's when you maximize that return and instead of playoff desperation. You're right. I mean,
Mhm.
that's because there's going to be that's going to be a big factor. To see what kind of in the off season of the how they're going to fit all the pieces in. So that's a good call.
Yeah. That being said, and again, in other organizations, maybe this is more of a thing. I don't think it's much of an issue for the Cardinals, but it should be noted JJ Wetherholt is tearing up Springfield,
Yeah.
right? I
Uh,
mean, and it's not, I mean, there are people from that draft that are already in the major leagues. It would not be, I'm not advocating it. I don't think the Cardinals would do it, but in a vacuum, it's not impossible to see him jumping from AA to the majors. And if that was the case, there's, that middle infield is already log jammed. So
Yeah, well,
could you do that thought experiment of, okay, they trade a JC or Gorman or somebody like that here for a big, some sort of starter and promote Wetherholt. I don't see that happening, but it's an interesting thing to think about.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's one thing that I wondered when we would talk about that on the show and bring that possibility up, because that, what I love about the current state of amateur baseball being college baseball to the minor leagues to the majors, that I don't know if that gap has ever been smaller. And I really really like that, and I think that's going to help the growth of the game, which I think is coming along. And I'll bring up a couple examples of that here in a little bit. But I do wonder how quick that's going to happen, and I think that the draft picks that they're making this year is going to be on the short term lookout for bringing guys up. I think that we really, really shorten that gap, and I love it. And I think that it's going to be massive for baseball. I'll say something on this. Being on an amateur level and seeing things here has been kind of a blessing to me to see that the game isn't dead. And like our kids are easy. Our kids are easy to sell on it because they've never been introduced to it. Goal number one for me was to get them to love it. And I feel like that we've accomplished that. I mean, they're going to big league ballparks now. They're going to the minor league ballparks around here. They're vested in what the people they know around here are doing, whether that's the name of the holidays, whether that's the name of the Willets. And those guys, it's easy for me to see on that, but they were the easy sell because they had just never been introduced to it. I'll say something that really blows me away. I was in the Denver airport last week. You would be amazed at the baseball shirts that you see. Baseball shirts and hats. And not big league teams, not minor league teams. The baseball brand shirts that you have to kind of dig to wear. You see a ton of those. You would be amazed how many I saw on the flight from Denver to Honolulu. It blew me away. I was like, those are baseball brand shirts. Those aren't ones you can just go on a regular search and find. I mean, you have to be vested in you have to be linked up with some of these crews to wear. I saw a lot of those. I saw a lot of perfect game hats that kids wear that have been playing. I do think that the game is growing. And I think a good example of that is to see the Skeens, the Lankfords, now the list is growing of guys that are making it a heck of a lot quicker than what you and I would see. You would see these draft picks and you'd forget about them until they come around. And very, very few times did these draft picks make big league debuts with the teams that drafted them. Think even back as far as 20 years ago in Moneyball. Those things happen. But I will say, I think that the game's growing, and a lot of it has to do with the shortened expectations of what these kids are seeing in super regionals, the College World Series, and these stars are making it to the big leagues quicker. I think that that's really helping out. To go back to the Wetherholt deal, it would not shock me to see him, or if you were to say he's getting called up this year, wouldn't blow me away, but I don't expect it. Next year, I would almost expect it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he goes to spring training with a legitimate shot at making the team. And then honestly, they may spend this winter again clearing that spot so he can claim it.
Sure.
Not that he has to have it, not that they're going to say, okay, here, you're starting second baseman, but they may move a Gorman or a Donovan or something like that so that if he wants it, he has it. If not, they've got some sort of backup that will cover it till he's ready. Yeah, I agree with you on the draft is here in a couple weeks. The Cardinals, you depending on the mock draft you see. I know you never draft for need in the draft, especially the early rounds. But in these situations where, like you said, these guys may be in the majors in a year or 2 years, it's not as unheard of, right? I mean, the Cardinals could use a pitching. I think in the system, I think that's fairly true. So, I mean, it doesn't mean that they'll use their first pick on a pitcher, but you could also imagine that they would take a Jamie Arnold or something
Yeah.
like that, and him be in contention for the rotation in 2027, assuming there is a 2027.
Yeah, I know. I hate that caveat, by the way.
I know. We got that in there though.
Yeah.
So, I think that's I think that factors in more than it used to, and it factors in more, especially when you've got a top 5 draft pick that the
Yeah.
Cardinals aren't used to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, not drafting for need made a lot more sense when it took people 3 or 4 years to make it to the major leagues because you didn't know what your needs were going to be then.
Sure.
As these guys, especially these early round guys, start jumping up so quickly, it's a little easier to say, okay, we're going to have this hole next year, so he could fill it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exciting it's exciting to be at this level right now, to see that these guys are coming quick, and you're closing the gap on the other sports where, the top draft picks and everything else is expected uh, to uh, to to be a part of, and to help the team right away. And I think that you're getting closer and closer to that now. And there's always the development side of it when you come from high school to college due to the bats, but they've dumbed down the metal bats so much that you're basically swinging a PVC pipe now anyway. So yeah, these guys are. I mean, they're coming ready. And I read something fairly interesting that Willits may go to OU, even
Really?
where his standing is right now.
That's the difference with NIL money nowadays too, right?
Oh, tell me about it. I mean, that's it's you play with brother and for dad. That's pretty crazy, and you make money doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it would be surprising for a guy that has been, at least, Cardinals have been rumored to take him.
Yeah,
So he's been rumored to go anywhere from, I think, anywhere from first to 10th,
yeah,
probably.
oh
So
yeah,
to see a top 10 draft pick turn it down and go to college, you don't see that very. I mean, I can't imagine the last time. I mean, without significant negotiations, I guess back in the old days, they maybe some did, probably because they didn't get the deal they liked. But um, to have that's pretty crazy.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's that could be a huge name off. So
Yeah, yeah, that would be. But also, that's also a nice little bit of negotiating tactics too. So,
well, though, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, no doubt about it.
I mean, there are slots and stuff, but you can still negotiate. So and that's been the case for years, right? I mean, forever, high school kids have threatened to go to college, or college kids have threatened to go back to school if they didn't get the deal that they wanted. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they settle. So I don't know. I would be but you're right. There's a draw there, and that threat is more significant when you can make millions of dollars in
Sure.
college.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what the NIL really kind of money is for baseball, but I imagine it would have
I
to be
would.
significant.
That's what I was gonna say, and I would assume that name in that town in Norman you would do all right.
Yeah, probably so. Probably so. Um, so what else about this team? I feel like we've kind of gone around a lot of things that I look forward to. Well, what has been good? What has been good about this team this week? What do you think?
Man, it's I still am blown away by the competitiveness of them.
Mhm.
And the just you brought it up earlier. They're never out of it. That's always the sign of a good clubhouse and a good culture. And that's I'm glad that Marmal's getting some push manager of the year stuff at this point. I think it's also kind of the low hanging fruit at this point, just because you're in it, and that's easy to say, just because prognosticators thought that you were going to be bad, but guys have overachieved but the beauty of it as a Cardinals fan is to see that, hey, some of these guys are becoming who we thought they were going to be, or I guess hope is a better word. But I love the competitiveness of the team. I mean, I think Contreras is a big part of that. The and I mean, he's becoming a true Cardinal. That's what's fun to watch. I don't have the doomsday outlook on them. I feel like they're here for the long haul. It's extremely entertaining to watch them play, and then that's all you can really ask for. I've said this for years: just don't ruin our summer. And I just don't think that's going to happen. And they're exciting to watch, that's the takeaway that I have right now. I'm looking forward to today, even after the sweep. I mean, it's kind of the ebbs and flows of the season and what I want to tell myself, and I would assume today is going to be pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, we've reached July 4th, and they were tied, at least, or virtually tied, for the last wild card spot. So, yeah, summers are not ruined. I think that's pretty safe. I mean, even if they went into a tailspin, I don't think that you consider it a ruined type of thing, because we've spent more than half the year in watching a contending team. So
Yeah.
that is good. Speaking of Contreras, is there? I don't feel like he's not an Anthony Rizzo. I don't feel like he stands around top of the plate, but he keeps getting hit.
Yeah.
I mean, he got hit again this week on the hand, which is what made him miss the game on Wednesday. Hopefully, with the day off, we haven't heard any negative issues. He should be back in the lineup today. But what is? I mean, like I said, we have John Jay on the coaching staff, so somebody was going to be learning how to get hit. But I don't know exactly what the deal is, unless that's just the book is out on Contreras to pitch him in. But he seems to be getting hit a lot more often and in a lot more dangerous spots than we would like.
Yeah, I've always wondered on that is I would like to see the book and the way they approach hitting, facing him, and I think that always plays a big part in it. That his cold zones are up and in, and you got to stay in that. And sometimes it's risky business to play in that area because you're going to hit a guy. I would assume that's probably a lot of it. I would also assume that he's probably fun to hit. One of those, you love him on your team, you hate him if he's not, type situation. But I would say there's probably a mixture of both of that's a little bit of truth. You'd find that truth in the middle.
Yeah, probably. I mean, we definitely have seen that, because we didn't like him much when he was a Cub, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, nowadays, he's definitely ingrained himself in St. Louis, to the point that it was, again, I think I was very surprised. We talked about this on the winter. I was very surprised that he didn't want to leave. Right? He was
Yeah.
just, he wanted to stay in St. Louis. He wanted to win here, and and a guy that hadn't necessarily been here for a long period of time and had not necessarily had the best experience while he had been here. It was surprising, but I'm glad he has, and it has been a significant. It's been huge for this team. I mean, to have that kind of leadership, especially for these young guys coming up, I don't know that they could have. I don't think you could overstate it.
Yeah. No, agreed. And that's what I like now. There's always contractual obligations, and we understand that money is the driving factor. It's the job for these guys.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if your Gray and your Contreras didn't see that, hey, we're going to be a heck of a lot better than people think, just because of the things that they would see inside the clubhouse and the work ethic of some of these guys has proven to be pretty substantial. That they actually thought, hey, we're going to be there, and that's the optimistic view of mine, to think that they saw some things that we didn't, and that's kind of playing out into fruition. And it kind of, I say this all the time, and I brag about him just because he's the coach's type of player, and that being Donovan. And you wonder how much of a factor him being hurt played a role last year, because they're just a different club, whenever he's there, and he's a mainstay in the lineup, and when he's out, you can really tell the difference. And that's probably why he and Burleson are some of a couple of my favorite players. And I wonder if that didn't play a part. And I wonder if some of these long term contract guys didn't see the same thing.
Maybe. I mean, wouldn't be surprised that. Yeah, I mean, if they had been on a team that was a bunch of old broken down guys, they would have said, "Yeah, let's get out of here." But they probably wouldn't have signed in St. Louis in the first place to some degree. I'm sure that was a large part of it, is that they saw the talent that was there, and there are other factors like Sonny Gray had just signed with the Cardinals, and he signed in part because of the location. It was close to home, right? And if he was gonna, he couldn't necessarily pick a better spot. He'd been in Cincinnati. Maybe he could have gotten to Atlanta. Atlanta probably would like him right now. But for the most part, I think he felt like not only is this a decent team, he was the spot he wanted to be in. And Contreras had obviously taken St. Louis to heart as well. So I think there are a lot of factors for those guys, but I'm sure the fact that this team looked like I don't know if they expected to necessarily contend this year, but in a year or two was going to have a lot of young, good talent on it.
Yeah.
And then that had to play quite a role. What do you think about, what's your opinion on Sonny Gray right now?
Oh
Loaded
man.
question.
I don't know. It's funny that what makes you ask that?
Well, I asked that because this week was kind of exactly that dichotomy we're seeing on the Cardinals, and I feel like we see it quite a bit with Sonny Gray. Friday night he goes out and he throws a one hitter. He's
Yeah.
dominant against Cleveland, and then has an okay start. And I know some of the runs that were charged to him scored after he left, but still 6 innings, 4 runs, I think is what it was against 6.1, 4 runs against the Pirates. He's got, I'm looking at his game log, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different games, I think, maybe 6 that he's had scoreless, when he's out there. But then he's
Yeah.
got 3 or 4 games where he's given up 5, 6 runs.
Yeah.
It feels like he is not quite as consistently dominant as I would like. He's obviously still very good, and I'm obviously still very glad he's on the Cardinals.
Agreed. Yeah.
But I don't always know exactly which Sonny Gray we're going to get when he goes out there.
No. Okay. Well, I didn't kind of understand the context of what you were saying, because I do think that he's kind of an odd cat as well. You know what I mean? And some of the post gamers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I felt like that started last year. You're just like, well, why don't you tell us what you think the problem is? You remember that whole situation?
Yeah.
So I didn't know what angle you were coming from. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's one of those to where I feel like it's an up down type situation. On those starts where in when he's good, he's really good. And he kept him in the game the other day, but still, that was one of those that he gave up 1 run until the runners were charged to him, but yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, it's kind of an inconsistency with him. At the top of the rotation. I even saying that, I really wish he was pitching this weekend. That probably says it all, but yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I feel like that the inconsistency starts and ends with him, and that's kind of why the rotation seems dicey at times.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a 3.5 ERA. He's got a 2.88 FIP. I mean, he's good. I don't want to discount that, and I agree with you. I think it's interesting, and I'm not really sure exactly why, that the club didn't juggle the rotation a little bit to make him face the Cubs at least once. I mean, we're going to have 7 games in 2 weeks against the Cubs, and your best pitcher isn't going to pitch in any of them. Again, I mean, there are reasons for that, and there's reasons for State keeping on schedule, but it just seemed a little bit weird that they didn't try to push him into at least one of those series.
Yeah. I mean, I was really surprised by that, and I guess they don't have to give an explanation on it. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny that there wasn't any shuffling at all to make it happen. I mean, I was really surprised by that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I know that they have placed a lot on consistency, right? And then
Yeah,
that they don't, you know, they're not messing with people's routines and things of that nature if they don't have to. I mean, obviously the rainouts have forced that somewhat.
yeah,
But I, I'm like I said, I'm just a little bit surprised that they didn't find a way to let Michael McGreevy or somebody start that last game in Pittsburgh and let Sonny Gray start.
yeah.
But then again, it's possible. I don't know. They look at the stuff. They may look at this as it's not a good matchup for Sonny Gray, and they don't want
Sure.
him facing the Cubs. I don't know. I mean, I doubt it a little bit, but it's possible because they look at a lot of different things that we don't look at. We just look at, hey, Sonny Gray's the number one guy, and we should put
Well,
him against the Cubs. And they're like, we got to win games no matter where they are.
sure. I mean, you know what? You're probably onto something there because if I'll be honest with you, I would much rather see a Liberatore against them
Mm,
than a
yeah,
Gray. I mean, as
yeah,
far as whenever I know that he's going to run into an innings cap, and I feel like there's a little bit of fatigue going on right now, but I honestly feel like Liberatore throws up the best starts of any of them, and he's fun to watch, and that's one of those in some of the big matchups I would rather him take.
mm. That is an interesting. I mean, that's definitely such a different perspective than we had on him last year,
Oh, tell
right? I
me about it.
mean,
Yeah,
this is okay. He may turn out to be an okay reliever, but otherwise, this has been a bit of a flop. But you're right. I mean, he had a couple of rough starts at the beginning of the month. I had about a stretch of about three. Texas, Royals, Toronto. But other than that, he's been pretty solid of 6 or 7 innings and just maybe a couple of runs. So yeah, I can understand where you're coming from, for sure. That I think he may be a little bit more consistent and maybe not reach the highs that Gray does, but
yeah,
if you're probably, I mean, he's the number two right now, right? I mean, nobody else is really kind of claiming that. I mean, we saw a good outing out of Palante. We've seen a little bit of stuff there, but I think right now your rotation is Gray, Liberatore, and that's a long way from where we thought it would be.
yeah. I mean, it's yeah. His development has been. I mean, that move, which we didn't see coming at all, I felt like has worked.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely has. I mean, I didn't think it would. I thought he was going to be fine as a reliever, and then when they moved him, not only when they moved him, but they moved him at the very last minute into the rotation. I thought, okay, we're overreacting to spring again, which is what we've seen them
Yeah,
do over the last few years with Jordan Walker and Victor Scott. And no, they were right on this one. There's no doubt that Liberatore has made them look good, and I don't know if that's another year with Dusty Blake. I don't know if that's some other parts of the organization and the development people they've brought in, whatever the case may be, or if it's just the fact that hey, you're going to go out there, you're going to be part of the rotation, and if you blow up, you're going to be out there another 5 days. I
yeah,
don't know. They talk a lot about that and how much that means to the mindset of the athletes, and if that's the case, knowing that you don't have to be perfect is probably a good thing.
sure. Yeah, just you get that runway that they've been speaking of. That it turns into confidence. I mean, I felt like it's been a great move, and that's he's one of those that I'm like I feel the best whenever he's on the bump.
Yeah. All right. It's another, we talked about this a little bit last week, but I'll get your thoughts on it too. It's another one of these series coming up this weekend, starting today, that is on 3 different spaces. Apple
Yeah.
TV today, FanDuel gets Saturday's game, and then ESPN has Sunday night's game. Um, is that a big deal for you, or is it not?
I mean, it's a pain in the butt, but I mean, I understand. I think I'm on a big kick right now to get it out as much as possible, so it doesn't bother me
Mhm.
as much. I mean, Is this as of right now, until they switch games around, the ESPN game that's going by the wayside. Somebody's picking it up, which I'm kind of excited about that. But yeah, I mean, I know that it kind of stinks to have to jump through, and some people don't have the same avenues to watch, and you don't want to have to get a subscription just to watch. So that can kind of be a pain, but I kind of do like the idea of spreading it out a little bit to open it up to as many eyes as possible. And I kind of like the Apple broadcast, honestly.
I can understand that, and I there's definitely a point for that, for sure. What I would like to see them do, if they're going to do this, and again, it's difficult because of the matchups and things like that. I really would rather if ESPN gets Sunday night's game, then Apple can't have Friday's game or something like that. Where
Yeah.
you're not switching for three. Maybe one game can be of a series can be on a national broadcast, or there's simulcast on the on your normal thing. Because like I said, I pay for FanDuel, and I would like to see most of the games there, and most of the games are there. I get that, but they're just it's always these matchups, and usually I know you used to see it, especially, and you probably still do, with the Yankees Red Sox, right? They would be on,
Man.
Yes. MLB on Friday and Fox on Saturday and ESPN on Sunday, something like that. And I get it, because those are the matchups that they want to put out there to a national audience, because that's the ones they want to see. And so, but I would still rather it be, if, one national broadcast or one exclusive broadcast per series. And I know we'll never see that, but that would be at least modified a little bit, because, as it goes right now, I can watch Saturday's game and that's it,
Yeah.
And so,
Which stinks.
Yeah, it does. But
no.
without buying a ESPN Plus subscription and an Apple TV subscription or whatever, and again,
and I'll tell you the truth. You have to buy an upgraded ESPN Plus subscription to watch Sunday's game. It's just not the standard one.
Yeah, and there's just not.
Yeah,
I don't watch enough to need that, and I've thought about Apple TV a little bit, but not enough. I wouldn't watch it enough probably to add another streaming service to my list. So, I mean, that's the good thing, at least, about the Roku games, which we saw last, against the Guardians. We saw that the same kind of split, Apple TV, but then Roku on Sunday morning. I don't like the start times, but at least Roku's a free thing, right? I mean, most people have a Roku TV, but if not, I think you can download the Roku app, and you can still watch the game. So it's kind of like what Apple TV was that first year, right? You could watch it without a subscription, and then now you can't. So if there were options like that, I wouldn't worry about it as much. But when you have, when you're putting everything behind paywalls, and you can't watch 2/3 of a series, and that, against a big rival, that is a little frustrating.
Sure. Yeah, that I completely agree with.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll see how. I know that, baseball is trying to has a push toward like 2028 to put all their rights under one umbrella, and we'll see how that goes. I'm sure it'll have to be. That's probably be part of what goes on with this CBA and things of that nature. We'll see what things look like down the road. But, and again, I can't complain too much. At least you can actually stream inside the market now. So there is that. So, all right. Well, the Cardinals have, like we say, just a couple of weeks till the All-Star break. They got the 3 games with the Cubs. They've got 3 games with the Nationals, and then 3 games with the Braves before hitting the break. Who is going to, and I feel like we're probably at that point, right, that there's only one Cardinal All-Star this year.
Yeah.
Who is it, do you think? Who would it be? Who do you think it will be, and who would you have?
Man, I would love it for it to be Donovan. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm really not sure who they take. I really don't know. I mean, I want to say it's probably going to be an arm, but I don't know where that fits. I mean, now Helsley was the luxury guy last year, and he didn't go, correct?
I think that's right. That's right. He had, did he have his child? I think it's like my wife is labor, something like that. But I think he was the guy, and he didn't actually go to the.
Yeah. So I'm not sure who goes this year.
It's interesting. I think you're probably right that Donovan has the best case for it overall. I mean, I'd love to see him, Wynn get a look at on the major leagues or the big stage, but
Agreed.
that's my bias there. I mean, could still be Helsley. Like I said, if you're taking an arm, he hasn't had the year that he had last year, and it might be, could be Sonny Gray.
Yeah.
Although, or even, it's possible it'd be Matthew Liberatore, although I'd
Yeah.
be a little bit surprised. I can't imagine. I think if he wasn't hurt, Ivan Herrera probably would go.
Agreed.
Um,
Agreed.
but the injuries have been enough on him. So yeah, it is I mean, there's been guys that have played well for the Cardinals, but that also doesn't mean that they've played well enough to
Yeah.
be an all-star level. So
I'm back to the jealous point of see how they're all downvote,
yeah,
of fan voting. It's I understand the world we're in, and who is going to get those votes, and it's the guys that's on the cover of the video games and stuff like that. But it is still disappointing to see where it is now compared to where it was 15 years ago, to where you would see them at the top of every one of those votes.
yeah. But then again, I mean, I feel like, and I would be interesting to check because I did see somebody put up a tweet that I didn't look at it in closely, so I may be misstating it, but it did point out that like 8 of the 10, like a lot of these all-stars are coming from the big cities, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And now that you don't vote in the stadium, that you vote online, I mean, there's always been an advantage, but I think the Cardinals had that advantage of packing 40 something thousand people in, and they would be voting and a lot of that, at least you had that option. I mean, I know online has been a thing for a while. I would just imagine that the Cardinals share of things has continued to drop
Yeah.
as online voting has come along. And I mean, they don't have Albert was going to always get, because Albert was Albert, right?
Yeah.
And Yachty had that kind of name recognition too.
Sure.
But now that those guys are gone and you don't have that superstar, it becomes difficult to break through, because I think, as we continue to talk about a lot with baseball, it is a very regional thing, and you focus on your team, and that's, I do that absolutely.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to vote accurately for all stars around the league, most likely, because I'm focused on what the Cardinals are doing. And I think that's part of it. I think, just the market sizes are smaller, and you know, it's just easier to do. I mean, you can vote. Well, it used to be. I don't know if you can still vote 25 times or whatever the case may be. It's easier to do, from not have to be at the stadium, and I think that probably plays into it somewhat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah. I love the in stadium voting, but I mean, I
Mhm.
understand why they got away with it, or why they did away with it. It is online. You do get the multiple votes. I did a couple times this year, and I tried to help the case of Wynn. Anyway, it's funny you bring that up, because it was Wynn and Donovan who I pushed for the most, just because
Yeah.
I think Wynn's one of those guys that I think is close to being name recognition, where he may be there. I think defense is
Yeah.
going to lead the way on him, and I think that he's close. But yeah, that's kind of how I voted. But you're right. I mean, and it's one of those, back to the grow the game speech that I had a little bit ago. That's the good and the bad with what's going on. I mean, because a lot of these guys, there are a lot of kids who are fans of players, not teams,
Yeah.
and that's great for the long term of the game, but bad in a situation like this, because we're going to see the same people every year.
Yeah. And I mean, again, you got to make a name for yourself on the national stage, and that happens in the winter two different ways. One, if you play in October, which Cardinals have not been doing, right?
Yeah,
If you've got to get on those big stages, you've got to have those moments, or you need to be good enough that you're signing huge contracts, and people know about you because of the huge contract, like the Bryce Harpers and things like that. And
yeah,
again, a lot of those guys that are making that kind of money are on the coast, right, in those big markets, and that's
yeah,
another reason that we're seeing the stratification of the game is all these. The Dodgers have an all-star team on their roster right now.
yeah,
It's not surprising that they have a lot of all-stars. The Mets have spent a lot of money. And again, when you factor in the talent that they've brought into these, that's kind of getting centralized on some of these teams, and the market size that they have, it's not too surprising. I mean, we're a long way from, at the mid 50s when the Reds packed the ballot box and got 4 Reds elected, or the
Yeah.
whole, that kind of thing. And where, that's just not, I mean, if that happens now, it's going to be because the Dodgers have, legitimately have 4 or 5 people that are legitimately all-star types.
Yeah. That's very
And
true.
so, some of that is just the way the talent has clustered, I think, to some degree too.
Yeah. No, I agree. Agreed. And that's, it, I don't know what you can do about it, essentially.
No, not much. I mean, we'll just have to say, I think it's another reason, and I have always been in favor of this, but it's another reason that the representative, every team has an all-star rule is a good rule.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I mean, it might be just Dodgers Yankees,
Yeah. Agreed.
I mean, to some
Yeah.
degree. I think it's really good and really important. And I know we've done this just like we're doing it now, but those mid 90s when Ozzy was the only guy that was there, but at least you had your Cardinal, right? You could watch
Yeah.
when you saw the highlights, or I mean, when you were watching the game, you could see that, that Cardinal red out there. It meant something, to be able to, and I know that other teams like the Royals and things of that have had those kind of runs as well, where, at least you've got your guy. And I think that's always been an important thing.
Yep. Yeah. No, I agree with you on that. I do like the rule myself.
Yep. All right. Well, like I said, we'll be back next week, talk about hopefully a good weekend at Wrigley and a bounce back week. Hopefully, we're definitely talking about some runs being scored.
Sure.
For sure. So if we're
Yeah.
not, we got more problems than we can talk
Get
about.
Herrera back pretty darn quick,
Yep, that's right. So anyway, for Alan, I'm Daniel. Good night and happy 4th.
Good night.
Did we really see that? He hit 080 during the regular season. He has 1 lifetime home run. Here's his second. Not only that, he knows the trot. Look at this. His second major league home run. Quite timely. Oh!